There are some significant shifts that have been happening in the luxury real estate market here in Vancouver. And is the luxury market here in Vancouver in trouble? We know that earlier in this year that the foreign buyer ban on property purchases has now been extended another 2 years into 2027. So anyone who is transacting here in Vancouver and across the province in these major metropolitan areas have to be a local, which has definitely had its challenges for the luxury market, not being able to have this infusion of international money and not having those options really out there whatsoever. So what do I mean by the luxury market? So in this case and this report that I'm going off of and going to show you some of the data as we go further into the video here is properties that are $4 million and greater. And I'm going to be showing you that if you have been looking in that phase, this is a really good time. There's a ton of inventory out there. And we're going to speak to some of the issues that's facing the luxury market here in Vancouver, West Vancouver, Vancouver West, and some of these other areas as well. So make sure that you stay right to the end. That's where we're going to be doing all of this data. My name is Kyle Mark, your Vancouver realtor. So whether you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or relocate here to Vancouver, make sure you book that consultation with me. All my information is in the description below. I'm super easy to get a hold of and I am here to help. So as we know, for several years, the real estate market in Vancouver has continued to pump, especially in these luxury spaces, seeing these properties that are currently going up and up in value. I was just doing a little search recently and the most expensive residential property right now listed is in West Vancouver at $58.8 million. But what we've been noticing for quite some time is that there is not a lot of movement in these price points. So what does that mean? When there's not a lot of movement in these price points, that means there is a lot of opportunity. Homes are stacking days on market and you have a lot more selection than what you used to have in previous years. We also know that the teeter-totter with these rates is starting to come down and eventually it's going to slide in the direction of sellers. But right now, if you're a buyer, and especially as we enter into these winter months, there is going to be some really good opportunity for anyone who's wanting to get into that luxury space, whether it's a condo, townhouse, whatever your needs are, there is an opportunity out there for you. No matter what you are looking for, Vancouver has a luxury space for your needs, whether it is a penthouse in downtown Vancouver with those sprawling ocean and mountain views, or if you're wanting to live in the opulent neighborhoods such as Shaughnessy or out in West Vancouver, there is a space for you and there is a breeding ground for the wealthy here in Vancouver. And that is why I wanted to put this video out so that you have this opportunity to be able to get into one of these luxury spots at a really good price point, because I think in the next couple years you're going to be able to take advantage of some low pricing now and some massive amounts of appreciation in the years moving forward, especially with what's happening on a political landscape. We just know what happened down south with the election. Donald Trump, whether you're for him or against him, it makes no difference. It's out of our control. But there has been a huge spike in terms of Google searches for people who are wanting to move back to Canada. For those who are looking to move back to Canada, they're ideally probably looking at either Toronto or Vancouver. And I know that we do have that foreign buyer ban, but there are millions of Canadians abroad that are citizens or permanent residences that can still come back here and purchase and transact property. So as we start to have this political landscape shore up, we know who's going to be leading the US for the next 4 years. And for us here in Canada, what is going to happen in our political climate? Is the Conservatives going to be able to come back to power, or are the Liberals going to be able to move forward with that as well? So there is a little bit of instability, political instability, but we are getting closer to have that stability that's needed. We also had that provincial election that was a lot closer than what people thought. The Conservatives almost did the impossible and were able to take over from the NDP. I think the Conservatives had their best showing in over 100 years. So as we start to get a little bit more stability here in Canada, I think the real estate market, especially in these luxury spaces where people are parking a tremendous amount of money, want to have that stability, and we're starting to get closer to that right now. Historically, the luxury market here in Vancouver has had a great amount of runway in terms of appreciation and growth. There's always been unlimited supply. There's been great economic growth within Vancouver as a whole, but with COVID and then these higher interest rates, it has definitely shaken up the luxury market here in Vancouver itself. According to a recent report by Sotheby, Southers International Realty Canada, sales of luxury residential real estate over $4 million in the city of Vancouver fell by 13% during July and August compared to the same period in 2023. In September, the decline was even more pronounced, with sales over $4 million down by 52% compared to the previous year. These significant drops obviously point to a change and shift in the marketplace, and as I get into the data here shortly, I'm going to show you exactly where these areas are, where these drops are happening, how significant these drops are, and really the lack of any movement when it comes to sales. So that's going to be really important for you to check out if you're thinking of getting into properties above that $4 million space in and around Vancouver. I've talked a little bit about the political climate down south as well as up here in Canada, but there's about 7 factors that I've identified that have contributed to this shift in the luxury market. So we're going to go over all 7 here just so that you have a better understanding of what to expect, whether you're a buyer or a seller trying to operate within these price parameters. Number 1 on that list is economic uncertainty. And we know that Canada has been battling inflation and it has started to decline, but now we are risking deflation in the economy, which is a very, very bad thing. I know a lot of people are cheering about these lowered rates, and yes, that's good and it's needed, but when we start to get into deflationary measures, that is really, really bad. So if you think about it this way, if we are in a period of inflation, your money is worth a lot less, right? If it's inflated values, $10 back in the 80s is not what $10 is worth now. On the complete opposite, deflation means your dollar is actually going up and is becoming more and more valuable. The reason why that is bad, if you're holding debt, especially if you're needing a mortgage on some of these high-end luxury properties, you're spending a lot more money on your debt rather than if we were inflationary times. So we need to start to get this inflation under control and stay at those 2% levels, with the federal government now wanting to put a huge hold on immigration and a workforce that Canada needs. That is what is contributing to some of this data of deflation. So we are sitting at 3.75 with the Bank of Canada policy rate. Before, they were wanting to settle at a policy rate of about 2.75%. I was just reading an article, it may need to drop down to 2% to try to stem the wave here of deflation and try to hold our economy so that it's not going to collapse around us. With that economic uncertainty and that period of inflation that we've been in, the cost of living here in Vancouver is very, very high. So obviously when you're leading to a place where housing is so high and the appreciation has been so pronounced over the last several years, that has had an impact on residential real estate, especially in the luxury sector as well. When people are having to pay such a premium for pricing, cost of living is so high in Vancouver, and the business opportunities just have not been there with the economy as a whole, people start to move away from luxury real estate. We also know in the luxury space, people have more than one property, and if it is more of a want than a need, luxury properties, vacation properties start to go onto the wayside because people don't need to transact in that right now because it's just not going to be a good financial situation. So those are some of the factors that are playing into it as well. With the foreign buyer ban being extended another 2 years, obviously that's going to have some implications in the marketplace as well. We're going to have to wait and see with the upcoming election, will the Conservatives start to pull back some of these things, or are they going to restrict it as well? And that's why the political environment is so important as well. If there's going to be policy changes and a new government, what is that going to look like for these hotspots such as Vancouver and Toronto when we look at real estate as a whole? And finally, rounding out the list here is public safety concerns. Since the pandemic, Vancouver for sure has become a lot more unsafe, with issues no matter where you live, with crime, with people feeling uneasy and unsafe, random attacks, racial attacks. The police are just not in control, and whether that is a government issue or a social issue, it's a mix of both of them for sure. But people are not having as much fun living here in Vancouver. I know that for myself. I was living in Olympic Village. My wife and my family, we decided to move a little bit further east. We were definitely not feeling safe in those more urban areas, and it just seems that the police do not have a hold on things. When people do get charged, the charges are not sticking, or they're not charging because they do not have the available resources to be able to detain these people. And it's these repeat offenders that keep happening and keep popping up on the news, and that's definitely scaring people away. We know all on the western seaboard here, from Seattle to San Francisco to Vancouver, these port cities, that crime and drug use and fentanyl and opioids and all these issues that are facing these cities is getting a lot worse, and people are not feeling as secure in the places that they once lived. So I think that is definitely having some impacts on the markets here in Vancouver and on the luxury space as well. When it comes to putting deals together here in Vancouver, it has been tough. I think no matter what segment you are in, there are still unreasonable expectations on the buy side and the sell side, And there are buyers that think you can just put in these lowball offers because of market conditions, and sellers thinking that they are still operating back in 2021, 2022, where their properties are just at a premium. And it's been hard for both parties to get together to put deals. And I think that's why you're starting to see a lot more of this stagnation. But the longer that this happens, it for sure favors buyers. And we're starting to have sellers understand that their properties aren't as valuable as what they thought they were, and are wanting to make those concessions to be able to move these properties as well. We're going to start with the downtown market and show you what's happening in this $4 million plus range. Obviously, in the downtown market, this is going to be primarily condos and some townhouses, but primarily this is going to be condo numbers here. So as we can pull down right here, we can see in these segments, and I like these analytical numbers because we can really highlight what is going on in the marketplace here. So between $4 to $4.5 million range downtown Vancouver. This is data from October, so this is fresh. There's 10 inventory, 1 sale, 10% buyer market conditions, so not a lot of movement. From 4.5 to 5 million in downtown, not 1 sale, 9 active, and 5 million and greater, just 2 sales. So if we look at the segment above 4 million, so we can see that in the month of October for properties above the $4 million mark, there's just 3 sales and there's 70 units available. So as you can see with these numbers, if you have 70 for your number for inventory and 3 sales, there's a huge logjam in the downtown core. I also know that for people wanting to shop downtown, it is a really good time right now to get into that downtown market. If we look at some of these sub areas, and like I said, this is not tied directly to the price point, and you can see that in the downtown markets, we're just in those balanced market conditions, with Cole Harbour sitting at 13%, downtown at 11%, West End 15%, and Yaletown 14%. So these downtown markets, if you're looking for a luxury apartment, something downtown in that $4 million range, you're going to have a lot of options and you're going to be able to get a good price. As we get into Vancouver's west side above this $4 million mark, you can see that there's been very, very little activity. So from 4 million and above, you can see that there's a tremendous amount of volume of inventory. Just in that 7.5 and above range, 149 units, not 1 sale. 7 to 7.5 million, 11 units, not 1 sale. If you look at that 4 to 4.5 range, 68 inventory, 10 sales, and 4.5 to 5, 58 inventory and 3 sales. You can see on the side here that we're heavily in buyer market conditions, as in opposition, as you can see what these entry level markers are here. So if you are looking in that space, especially above 7 million, you have a ton of options and there's just no movement in there. So some of these sellers are going to be wanting to make some deals. If you look in some of these areas, who is having the hardest time with movement, we can see that in the Southlands, and there's going to be a lot of luxury properties in there sitting only at 3% sales ratio. South Granville 5%, Shaughnessy 6%. So these are a lot of these luxury areas on Vancouver's west side that are having issues not only in the price band but in the community itself. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity in those markets on Vancouver's west side. If we go on to Vancouver's west side in the condo and townhouse market above 4 million, again, there's not one thing to report. From 4 million and above, there hasn't been 1 sale. Essentially from 3 million above, there hasn't been 1 sale in the whole month of October. Not as much selection. You can see that from 3.5 and above, you're looking at about, what is that, 3, 6, 8, 9 units. So not a lot of inventory and selection. You're far better looking in the detached market for sure. Heading over to West Vancouver, which is obviously a premier destination for luxury real estate. And looking again at this 4 million and above price point, there's been essentially no movement. We only have, what is that, 5 sales to report in the month of October from that 4 million and above, with a ton of inventory. You know, from 42 units between 4 to 4.5, 49 units from 4.5 to 5 million. There's a lot of selection out there with not a lot of movement. Above 7.5 million is the place where you have the greatest amount of selection, with 87 units with just that 1 sale. So West Vancouver as a whole is really hurting. Above, no matter where you're looking at, 6% on average. If we look at some of the communities which are having some hard times, again, British properties 4%. That's a luxury market. So we know that depending on where you are wanting to look, there is definitely going to be pockets for you to be able to get into a luxury space at a good price point. As we jump now into North Vancouver, we can see similarly the same thing. Anything above that 4 million marker, there's been only 1 sale. There's not as much selection here in North Vancouver in those ranges from 4 million and above, but we also know that there's just no movement. The most amount of selection is in that 4 to 4.5 range, where you see 15 inventory and no sales. Finally, I wanted to round things up with this graph. Up here, what you're going to see is these 4 municipalities and the comparing of what's been going on in a graph, so you can see visually exactly what's been going on. So green here is Greater Vancouver as a whole. We have yellow here, Vancouver West. Blue, North Vancouver, and this gray is West Vancouver. And what we have here is total inventory. So we can see as a whole a huge spike in terms of inventory, especially around Greater Vancouver. We went from just a couple years ago 3,800 units up to 46, so almost 1,000 units in just a 2-year span. You can see that there's been an increase no matter where you are at, with all these municipalities here as a whole, jumping from Vancouver West 572 to 610, 191 to 246 on the North Shore, and then 392 to 466 in West Vancouver. So you can see in West Vancouver 18.9% increase from year to year, 28.8% in North Vancouver, and as a whole 22% from Greater Vancouver. So some significant increases in the inventory, where we have been always facing an inventory shortage. And this is the sales data here with all these 4 municipalities on one graph. And you can see for the last 2 years, sales have been dropping and dropping and dropping, especially Greater Vancouver as a whole. We can see that the numbers here have had some minute changes, but there was really some big changes here from 2022 to 23, and then some more minor changes from 23 to 24. But that is just the climate that we've been in. And that's why I've been saying for this entire year, it has been a really good time, no matter if you're looking at luxury properties, entry-level properties, to get into the market, because we have been in these buyer market conditions for quite some time. As we finally wrap this up, I want to show you some sale pricing here. There's really been no change in terms of pricing for the last 2 years. It's been flatline, and that is to be expected. I guess that's some sort of a win for people who are looking to sell, that despite the market conditions, you haven't had the market just tank. And once we see these lulls for a couple of years, the market starts to pick up here. And I think that's where we are at now. You can get some cost certainty where there hasn't been a massive amount of appreciation over the last couple of years. And as these economic changes, these political changes start to stabilize, I do believe there's going to be some more stability in pricing and an increase in pricing as well. As we wait for December 11th, which is the next policy rate announcement from the Bank of Canada, where it's expected to see another 50 basis point reduction, we know that anything above that 10 million marker, in most cases, people do not need the help from the banks. But between that 4 to 10, mortgages are still somewhat of a concern. So it is going to be important for us to watch what happens on December 11th and see what the economy does moving forward. So if you are looking for some luxury properties and properties in that 4 million and plus range, you can see with the data today that there's some opportunity. Make sure you get in touch with me, shoot me a text. All my information is in the description below, or book a strategy session with me. And I'd love to be able to help you get a great deal and into the home of your dreams. My name is Kyle Mark, your Vancouver realtor. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or relocate to my beautiful city, Vancouver, make sure you get in touch with me and have a wonderful rest of your day.